because it's immoral. That's the problem. It's immoral. America's immoral. And the cities are immoral. And the environment's immoral. It's unethical. Kids starving and people having millions of dollars. So they don't care that it's the richest society ever. It's an unequal society. Now, you can't appease altruism, and get that bit out of your skull if you still think altruism has anything to do with benefiting anyone or doing anybody any good. It doesn't. Altruism is the sacrifice of the individual, which is why I defined it essentially as that earlier. That's the single essential of all theories of altruism, philosophical altruist ideas, etc. If we speak sociologically and anthropologically, I think we can say that altruism and mysticism are necessarily connected and intertwined. Now, we can relate this to the branches of philosophy. The branches of philosophy are metaphysics and epistemology are the base. Then ethics is how the individual acts. Politics is how society has to treat the individual and the relationship there. And aesthetics is art, the fifth.
Stop it there. This kind of reminds me of a conversation I had in class with some other students. I had to take an intro class in philosophy. I was obligated to take it due to grad requirements, but I had already been a philosophy major for a while and taken quite a few upper division philosophy classes, including ethics classes. And there was this woman in class that made a statement that if you weren't religious or you didn't believe in God, then you wouldn't do the right thing or the good thing, and that you'd absolutely have no reason to be a moral person, and that in a society that didn't believe in God, things would be reduced to chaos or as she called it, anarchy. I think she wasn't using the word correctly. I should probably say that she was a rather outspoken Christian and that she had made some rather inane statements about her Lord and Savior Jesus Christ and about the United States being a Christian nation during discussions that didn't really warrant such a comment. I was rather shocked, and I stated that I could think of at least 10 moral theories that right off the top of my head that would produce practically the same behavior as a good Christian would perform, and challenged her to think of just one act that a Christian could perform that an atheist wouldn't. And she said a Christian can tithe and an atheist wouldn't tithe. And many of the outspoken Christians in class laughed about this. Until I replied that, well, atheists give to charities all the time. People donate money every day to nonprofits, and that's what a church is, right? It's a nonprofit. It's a charity. People give money to the church for missionaries. You give money to an organization that does some form of good, which you support, but that you won't be doing personally, but you support monetarily, right? And no one really had a response to this. And the class continued. Now, this comment that altruism and mysticism are necessarily entwined brought me back to the Euthyphro, which is what I discussed with her in class later. And I said, I'm surprised because, this was disproven millennia, over 2,000 years ago. We discussed it, or at least Socrates discussed it when we talked about, in the Euthyphro. Basically talking about divine command theory, and a lot of this is going back to my ethics class. But basically, if you think that an act's right if and only if God commands it, and something's right because God commands it, then you're talking about divine command theory, specifically strong divine command theory. But if you're talking an act's right if and only if God commands it, but God commands it if and only if it's going to produce the best outcome, or whatever reason God has for commanding it, then you're talking about weak divine command theory, because God has a reason for telling you that something's good. Basically comes down to is something right because God commands it, or is God commanding it because it's right? And so you get this circular reasoning with strong divine command theory. But weak divine command theory proves that God is commanding something because it's good, not it's good because God commands it. By that rationale, anything that God said would be right. God could say, kill everyone on earth tomorrow, and it would be right because God commanded it. So I think the idea that altruism being, if you talk about it being a virtue or virtuous along the lines as, being pious or whatever, the idea that you could perform an altruistic act demands some form of mysticism. I think Socrates probably approach you the same way that he did Euthyphro and say, why would God command altruism? Would he command it you to do something that's not selfish because it's what I say and it's right, or is there a reason why God would say it? Just a point. Talking about mysticism, I wanted to read something. The next idea we take up is that of equality. The idea of the millennium has been a great incentive for work. Many religions preach this as one of their ideas, that God is coming to rule over the universe, and that then there will be no difference at all among men. That the people who preach this doctrine are mere fanatics. Again, talk about fanatics. And fanatics are indeed the sincerest of mankind. Christianity was preached precisely on the basis of the fanaticism and the fascination of this fanaticism. And that is what made it so attractive to the Greek and Roman slaves. They believed that under this millennial religion there would be no more slavery, that there would be plenty to eat and drink, and therefore they flocked around the Christian standard. Those who preached the idea were, of course, ignorant fanatics and very sincere. In modern times, this millennial aspiration is voiced through the slogans of liberty, equality, and fraternity. This is also fanaticism. True equality has never been and never will be on earth. How can we all be equal here? This impossible kind of equality implies total death. What makes this world what it is? Lost balance. In the primal state, which is called chaos, there is a perfect balance. How then do you explain the diverse forces in the universe? Through struggle, competition, and conflict. Suppose that all of the particles in matter were held in equilibrium. Would there then be any process of creation? We know from science that this is impossible. Disturb a sheet of water and you will find every particle of the water trying to become calm again, one rushing towards another, and in the same way, all the phenomena which we call the universe, all things therein, are struggling to get back to the state of perfect balance. Again, a disturbance comes, and again we have combination and creation. Inequality is the very basis of creation. At the same time, the forces struggling to obtain equality are as much a necessity for creation as those which destroy it. Absolute equality, which means a perfect balance for all the struggling forces in all the planes, can never be had in this world. Before you attain that state, the world will have become quite unfit for any kind of life, and no one will be here. We find, therefore, not only that all these ideas of the millennium and of absolute equality are impossible, but also say, if we try to carry them out, they will surely lead us to the day of destruction. And this was written by Swami Vivekananda in his book Karma Yoga and Bhakti Yoga. So the idea that mysticism and altruism are necessarily entwined may be false.